Tonight, presidency condemns call for secession and restructuring and says the federal government is working to address current challenges in the country. Representatives of judicial workers stage a walkout from a meeting with federal government over alleged neglect. Minister of Labour says action was not intentional. Senate moves to investigate alleged assault on a security guard by the chairman of the Code of Conduct Tribunal, Mr. Danladi Umar. And judgment expected to be delivered any time from now in the trial of Derek Chauvin over George Floyd's death. Plus, business, sports news from Abuja, and later, international news from our London studio.
On business news tonight, Central Bank sets up 500 billion naira non-oil stimulation facility to boost export of processed agriculture commodities across international markets.
On sports news tonight, Chelsea and Manchester City set to withdraw from the proposed European Super League due to overwhelming negative worldwide reaction.
And from Abuja, long queues resurface at petrol stations in Abuja as motorists lament difficulty in the purchase of petrol. NNPC GMD says situation will be over soon.
Amidst rising calls for restructuring and secession by some persons, the presidency has criticized the agitation, insisting that the unity of Nigeria is not negotiable. The senior special assistant to President Buhari on media and publicity, Mr. Garba Shehu, says those advocating secession and national conference are the problem of the country. He explains that the federal government is working to address challenges confronting the country. Mr. Shehu made the comments at a media parley at the All Progressives Congress headquarters in Abuja.
One thing with this president, and the National Secretary has said a bit of that, is that you can't intimidate Buhari. You can't bully him. A lot of these people who are calling for secessions, they're the problem of this country. And I'm happy that reasonable opinion is now being, reasonable voices are now rising. Is it not only yesterday we were reading Afenifere saying we are not the most credible faction of Afenifere. We are not for secession. Or Haneze Ndibo has said this over and over again. So this thing about secession is, they had used it in the past. You cry secession and break off of Nigeria, and then you intimidate the city leader. And then he opens the vault and he brings money to settle people. President Buhari will pay no one. He's not going to pay. And now it is clear that, having ignored all of that, reasonable opinions are coming from those states and from those regions. The governors in the southwest, we have all had them. They have denounced all of these things. So it is a sham. Nigerians want to be one, they want to continue. Yes, there are problems, and we are hoping that as people united and loving of one another, we'll come together and solve our own problems.
To other stories, the agitation for financial autonomy by members of the Judiciary Staff Union of Nigeria, JUSUN, is obviously not over yet, as the leaders of the aggrieved union staged a walkout from a reconciliation meeting with the federal government and representatives of state governors. The striking judiciary workers walked out after waiting for over an hour at the conference room of the Minister of Labour and Employment, where the meeting was to be held. They sang solidarity songs as they left the conference room of the Minister of Labour and refused to listen to pleas from the permanent secretary, who informed them that the minister was holding a meeting with the government team in his office. The meeting is the second in a series of meetings scheduled with the Minister of Labour aimed at resolving the impasse between the government and the judiciary workers who are demanding financial autonomy. And so the question is, did the federal government delegation deliberately leave the judiciary workers stranded at the meeting? The explanation of the Minister of Labour and Employment, Dr. Chris Ngige, is that the government team needed some time to close some loose ends from the resolutions reached during their meetings before meeting with the judiciary workers, and he is willing to reach out to the striking workers again.
The Governors Forum on one side, the judges who are heads of courts, the Judicial Union, the Parliamentary Union, and the speakers, Conference of Speakers. So they have reached some agreement at the parley they had with the Chief of Staff. And that was why we reconvened for today. We gave them an appointment for today. We gave them another appointment by last Friday because we were in the know that by yesterday, the necessary agreements will have been reached. And once necessary agreements have been reached as memorandum of understanding, we bring everybody here and detail them with timelines and time frame. So as they have finished them and come for this meeting. But there were some loose ends they did not tie up. So we took permission. I asked the permanent secretary and the officials responsible to explain to them, to the two unions, that they have to exercise patience, to enable us tidy these areas before meeting with them. So nobody slighted them, nobody refused to meet with them. We wanted to meet with them so that the meeting will be fruitful, so that whatever is signed here will be implementable. So that is, in a nutshell, what happened today. And we are making contact with them by tomorrow. And this work have not even finished. The government side have to go back. The Solicitor General and Implementation Committee, Secretary NJC, and all of them, they have to go back and tie up the loose ends that I have pointed out to them here.
Meanwhile, some lawyers in Lagos State have been explaining the reasons for their insistence on full autonomy for the judiciary. Among them is the need to detach judges from the apron string of the executive and legislature. They are wondering why their finances would be dependent on the State House of Assembly. The lawyers under the Nigerian Bar Association were speaking after a closed-door meeting with the Lagos State Governor, Babajide Sanwo-Olu, at the Lagos House Marina.
I want to say very clearly that the judiciary is the one holding both the executive and the legislature. And if there's any problem during after election, you run to judiciary. If there's any problem during administration, you run to the judiciary. And our own take is that judiciary must be properly put in its best position. And that is the reason why we are supporting JUSUN.
And we've come here to press on the point that this ought to be observed, because the Constitution is sacrosanct and is a document that underpins the very essence of our existence. Therefore, all responsible government at all levels should ensure full compliance with the constitutional provisions. Government should not pick and choose what provision of the Constitution to comply with. So we were Mr. Governor today. The listening governor, he met us at a very short notice, less than 24 hours, because of the sort of regard he has for the bar. So he met with us, and both sides we had a dialogue, and we heard from the other side of the coin. Of course, before we came here, we knew Lagos State had, partly or partially complied with this constitutional provision, and it confirmed the fact that in terms of recurrent expenditure, Lagos State has complied 100%. And in terms of capital expenditure, it's complied 75%. And in Lagos State, no judiciary goes cap in hand to the executive to beg for funds. They all go to the House of Assembly to justify their budget. But all that said, whether there is full compliance or not in Lagos, we've pressed on the point that this is something that ought to be done.
And to stories from the National Assembly, the Senate is asking its Committee on Ethics, Privileges and Public Petitions to investigate the alleged assault on a security guard by the chairman of the Code of Conduct Tribunal, Mr. Danladi Umar. This was the decision after a federal lawmaker from Plateau State submitted a petition to the upper chamber on behalf of the victim, Clement Sagwak. Mr. Sagwak is alleging that he was assaulted by the CCT chairman, Mr. Umar, and a policeman attached to him in March at the popular Banex Plaza, Abuja, where he works as a security guard. He says the CCT boss assaulted him while going about his lawful activities after he informed him that his car was wrongly parked. He's asking the Senate to ensure justice is done on his case. The Committee on Ethics is to investigate and report back in 4 weeks.
One, Mr. Clement Sagwak, whose petition is against the brutal assaults and violent attack meted on him by the chairman of the Code of Conduct Tribunal, Danladi Umar, on 29th day of March 2021 at Banex Plaza in Abuja. The petitioner is alleging that Justice Umar Danladi assaulted him, brutalized him, and slapped him on the face and asked him to kneel down and thereby use his leg to hit him on the chest and inflicted bodily harm on him, and is asking the Senate to investigate this matter to ascertain the role of the Honorable Justice Danladi in this allegedly unwholesome happening, to ensure justice to Mr. Clement Sagwak.
Just before we continue with stories from Nigeria, news just in, the verdict, former Minneapolis police officer Derek Chauvin found guilty of second-degree unintentional murder, third-degree murder and second-degree manslaughter in George Floyd's death, May 2020. Story, former Minneapolis police officer Derek Chauvin, who's been found guilty of second-degree unintentional murder, third-degree murder and second-degree manslaughter in George Floyd's death, which occurred in May 2020. 12 jurors found him guilty of the following, and this is the maximum sentence for second-degree unintentional murder, which is imprisonment of not more than 40 years. The maximum sentence for third-degree murder, imprisonment of not more than 25 years. And the maximum sentence, according to U.S. laws, for second-degree murder is 10 years and or $20,000 fine. Bring you more updates in the course of the bulletin. But back to the upper chambers, the lawmakers there, they've passed through a second reading, a piece of legislation which it hopes will sanitize the livestock industry and address the persistent farmers-herders clashes as well as cattle rustling in the country. During Tuesday's legislative proceedings, the upper chamber is proposing a bill to establish the National Livestock Bureau for the purpose of livestock identification, cattle rustling control, registration, and livestock disease control. The sponsor of the bill, Senator Bima Enagi, says the proposed legislation will greatly enhance the development of the country's livestock industry. In part two, after the break, Governor Wike warns newly elected local government chairman against deviating from PDP's standard of governance in the state. Please stay with us. Welcome back. If you just joined us, you're watching the news at 10 live on Channels Television Lagos. A reminder of our top stories. Presidency condemns call for secession and restructuring and says the federal government is working to address current challenges in the country. Representatives of judicial workers staged a walkout from a meeting with federal government over alleged neglect. Minister of Labour says action was not intentional. Senate moves to investigate alleged assault on a security guard by the chairman of the Code of Conduct Tribunal, Mr. Danladi Umar. And former Minneapolis police officer Derek Chauvin found guilty of second-degree unintentional murder, third-degree murder and second-degree manslaughter in George Floyd's death in May 2020. The chairman of the Southeast Governors Forum and Governor of Ebonyi State, Dave Umahi, has joined leaders across Nigeria in condemning the unnecessary attacks on the police. He made the comments while briefing journalists after presiding over the State Security Council meeting at the ESCO chambers of the Government House, Abakaliki, the state capital. This follows the burning down of police stations in some states in the southeast, including Imo, Abia, Anambra, and Ebonyi states. Governor Umahi expressed worry over the incidents, called on all well-meaning Nigerians residents in the southeast to rise up and condemn the shameful acts capable of throwing the region into avoidable anarchy. He also said any herder coming into Ebonyi State with an AK-47 rifle will be confronted.
We condemn totally the killings of policemen and burning of police stations in Southeast that are not being done by herdsmen. They are done by people across the Southeast, bandits and criminals. And my directive to policemen is that if you see anybody coming to kill you, demobilize the person. That is the rule of engagement. Police people should not fold their hands and be killed. Vehicles burnt, police stations burnt. And I want Southeast leaders to rise up to condemn this. How do we feel if because of the killing and burning of police stations in Southeast, the federal government decides to withdraw all the police people from Southeast? We should rise up to condemn what is evil. And this is very important. Those you claim are protecting us are not protecting us. Let us not create another monster in Southeast. We will all regret it. We will confront any herdsman coming to Ebonyi State with AK-47. I've directed that they should be confronted. If you are coming to Ebonyi State with AK-47, and my directive is just obvious because Mr. President had already directed as such. So if you're a herdsman, you are coming to Ebonyi State with AK-47, you will be confronted with the same measure that you are bringing to Ebonyi State.
As part of efforts to ensure effective security of lives and property in the country, the Acting Inspector General of Police, Mr. Usman Alkali Baba, is reaffirming the commitment of the force to restore police primacy in the internal security architecture of the country. He made the comments at an interactive session with study group of Course 43 of the National Institute of Policy and Strategic Studies. The acting IGP recalls the research conducted on community policing, which informed the adoption of the concept by the federal government as the internal security management strategy and the policing model to be adopted by the Nigeria Police for internal security governance in the country.
In relation to Nigeria Police under my leadership, our policy vision is to restore police primacy in the internal security architecture of the country by doing the following things. 1. Engaging cutting-edge policing technology and integrate intelligence-led policing practices to our functions with a view to strengthening our capacity to stabilize the internal security, restore order and public confidence in the force. 2. Giving full effect to the concept of community policing and deliver quality police service that will be guided by the principles of public accountability and conformity with the rule of law. 3. Taking the lead in strengthening interagency collaboration and embrace the social content of policing in which police officers see themselves as compassionate servants and helpers of the citizen and offer community services support to citizens in distress as well as vulnerable groups.
Away from security, the River State Governor JUSUN has warned of dire consequences for any local government chairman who fails to meet the standard of governance set by the People's Democratic Party in the state. Governor Wike stated this when the newly elected chairman in last Saturday's local government election in the state paid him a thank you visit at the Government House, Port Harcourt today. He says the chairman risk impeachment if they indulge in corruption, marginalize their deputies and appointees, or fail to deliver the dividends of democracy.
2 days after they were declared winners of the local government election in Rivers State, the 23 elected chairmen and all female deputies are in the Government House in Port Harcourt. The council officials, all of whom are members of the People's Democratic Party, are here to thank Governor Wike for leading the party to a total victory on April the 17th.
We never recorded any violence, neither did we record any death in the 23 LGAs. It shows the capacity that RISEC has to conduct this election.
Governor Wike seizes the opportunity to tell the council officials what is considered some hard truth.
Stay in your local government. If you know you will stay in Port Harcourt, then you are going to pick form to run as Port Harcourt local government. So if you pick form from Abuja, stay there. Don't just come and stay there. After every allocation, you got treasurer. Remove this, then pay the hours. It does not work that way. You will pay dearly for it, but don't take the luck too far. Give councillors the entitlement. Even your supervisors you appoint, you will not pay them. Give your vice chairman the entitlement.
After the heated session, some council chairmen promised not to disappoint the people.
The 5-point agenda my team and I came to Ikure local government people in 18th of June 2018 when they gave us the first opportunity. We're going to dig deep on it. We'll conclude other projects that we have not concluded, and we'll do more projects.
We know that we've raised the bar, and we'll try as much as we can not to go below what the standard that we have set.
We have the desire, especially the women, to create a financial base for them where they can come and take money that they will not even pay any interest, but it will be a revolving loan.
Just as the governor, River State residents indeed expect much from the new chairman, among whom are 2 former commissioners, 2 former special advisors, and 2 former principal officers of the State House of Assembly.
And another round of victory it is for Governor Rotimi Akeredolu of Ondo State, as the state's governorship election petitions tribunal today dismissed the petition challenging his victory at last year's governorship election. The candidate of the People's Democratic Party, Eyitayo Jegede, had approached the tribunal to challenge Governor Akeredolu's re-election for a second term in office. But the petition did not work in Mr. Jegede's favor, as the judges struck it out for want of jurisdiction.
Having satisfied the requirements of the law, I hereby declare Oluwarotimi Odunayo Akeredolu, Senior Advocate of Nigeria, as the winner and is hereby returned elected.
That was the verdict which signaled the end to the Ondo State governorship election race. But certainly, that was not the end to the JUSUN. Mr. Eyitayo Jegede and his political party, the PDP, were not satisfied with the outcome of the election, and they went ahead to challenge the election legally. About 6 months after a winner is announced, the tribunal was ready to deliver its judgment. The 3-man panel of the Election Petition Tribunal strikes out the petition filed by the PDP candidate in the Ondo State 2020 governorship election, Mr. Eyitayo Jegede, for lack of jurisdiction. Mr. Jegede is seeking the tribunal to nullify the victory of the APC candidate, Rotimi Akeredolu. The 2-hour sitting was monitored virtually. At the Government House in Akure, APC leaders and top government officials joined Governor Akeredolu to celebrate the tribunal judgment. The governor is now reaching out to his opponent, Eyitayo Jegede.
I use this opportunity again to thank the people of this state for the confidence they have reposed in us. The people have spoken, and I know that they cannot be wrong. The result is there for all of us to see. Let us all join hands together to build this state together.
Mr. Jagede, a senior advocate himself, is considering his options after the tribunal's verdict.
I do not really want to pass any comments or make any comments until we have had the opportunity to study in details the decisions of their lordships. In their wisdom, they found merit in some of the POs raised by the respondents. They agreed it's a constitutional issue. And then for us, our hands are on the plow. And there's no looking back.
If the PDP candidate and his party decides to pursue the case further, legally speaking, of course, the options are still open and, in fact, up to the highest court in the land. Sean Kimbaloye, Channels Television News.
When the news at 10 returns, we have more stories from Abuja studio. Plus, central bank sets up 500 billion naira non-oil stimulation facility to boost exports of processed agricultural commodities in international market. That's on Business News. Do join us again. The Lagos State Judicial Panel on Restitution for Victims of SARS today struck out one petition for lack of diligent prosecution. But the panel reversed its decision in another petition and adjourned for final addresses in yet another. The highlight of the day's proceedings is the testimony of a petitioner, Collins Ikoro, whose encounter with SARS officials September 2020 went viral after some onlookers recorded the incident. The witness narrated how he booked a boat ride with his friend and was stopped by two SARS officials who proceeded to assault and extort from them. To other stories, Kano State INEC headquarters has been gutted by fire in the early hours of today. The data processing unit was burnt down, but the main building is intact as the Kano Fire Service tried to put out the flames. Although the cause of the fire has not been ascertained, eyewitness accounts narrate what transpired. Investigation is still ongoing to ascertain the cause of the fire and measures taken to prevent a repeat of such incident. We take you to the nation's capital where Terry Kumi has some more stories. Terry?
Well, hello, Millicent, and welcome to the nation's capital. Abuja, the nation's capital, is again witnessing long queues at petrol stations as motorists lament difficulty in purchasing premium motor spirit, otherwise known as petrol. The Group Managing Director of the Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation, Malam Mele Kyari, is assuring Nigerians that the queues will diminish soon. Mr. Kyari explains that the NNPC had intervened to resolve the planned industrial action by petroleum tanker drivers against their employers.
Long queues of vehicles waiting for petrol at the NNPC petrol station in Guzape. Some motorists have been on the queue since the early hours of the day, with the hope of getting the product fading by the hour.
I've been here for like 3 hours, and we cannot move an inch, and we are still hoping we can get for before the day runs out.
3 hours, it's not been easy, to tell the truth. It's not funny. And one thing about this one is that I never even heard there was going to be any inflation, any increment in price. I never heard there was going to be any strike. I just, was just passing since yesterday. It's just been crazy.
Since 7 o'clock a.m., I'll be here. I think that is to 2 now. If that is increase, if you buy and go, nobody scratch your car. Then you stay, at the end of the day, see buy, somebody scratch your car. If they scratch this car now, maybe before I can put it in order, it's not an easy thing.
Black market traders are having a field day as commuters continue to wait under the scorching sun to get the product. The queue is causing heavy traffic along some of the major roads.
Looking at the environment, you know that we are not finding it easy to access fuel.
And looking at the weather also, the weather is hot, the place is hot.
They only give some of the people that they know them. Some others come through back, but we will be in day queue. Few of us, they allow us to enter. As you can see, if Adimi, they allow people here enter, this place will not remain like this.
Meanwhile, the group managing director of the Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation believes the situation will relapse in less than 24 hours.
Skills will go away because there was industrial action by petroleum tanker drivers against their employers, the National Association of Road Transport Owners, around their compensation package. And those issues were not resolved up to yesterday until we intervened to ensure that there's an amicable settlement between the parties so that they will have peace, and then normal loading operations will commence from the depots. As I speak to you this moment now, loading has commenced in all depots in the country. Dispatches of trucks are ongoing in all depots in the country, and they have called off the strike for a period of 1 week so that enable us to intervene and find resolution.
The NNPC is assuring Nigerians that there is no plan to increase the price of petroleum product in May.
The newly appointed Pro-Chancellor of the University of Lagos, Senator Olarenwaju Tejuosho, is promising to bring his wealth of experience garnered over the years to move the university to greater heights, making it the topmost university in Nigeria and Africa. Having spent more than 40 years from primary to tertiary, he underscores the importance of tackling the challenges, especially funding facing the university immediately. He was speaking at a dinner organized in his honor in the nation's capital, Abuja. In attendance was the Speaker of the House of Representatives, Right Honorable Femi Gbajabiamila, the Deputy Chief Whip of the House, Nkiru Onyejocha, the Minister of Trade and Investment, Adeniyi Adebayo, Minister of State for Health, Senator Olorunibe Mamora, alumni of the school, and a host of others.
The only way one can attempt to make a difference is if you know the good from the bad. But someone that has not experienced UNILAG when it was at its best, it's very difficult for him to try to change what he met, because he will believe that is normal. It's just like if you bring a white man from United Kingdom to Nigeria today, and NEPA goes, he will think there's an emergency in the world. He will think something else, because they are not used to the power going like that. But if you take somebody from Agege, and you take them to Sokoto and the light goes, you say, okay, Joba Mimu can do it. Okay, because they don't know the difference. So we know what UNILAG should be. So, and that is our minimum expectation, to ensure that we achieve, at least let's go back to where we started from before we start moving up.
The Speaker of the House of Representatives, on his part, says he is confident in the abilities of the Pro-Chancellor to bring the desired reforms to the institution, but it should be a gradual process.
For me, it's all about infrastructure, infrastructure, and infrastructure. That is the only way you can take UNILAG to where it's supposed to be. What you get out of a student who studies under a tree, come rain or shine, however good that result is, cannot be the same as what you would have gotten out of that same student if he was in a conducive learning environment. And that is what I think university in Nigeria today lack. And I believe that Dr. Tejuosho has the wherewithal to put these things together. And it's not about government alone. Government is going to provide as much as it can in terms of funding. But when you have a spread in universities like we do in Nigeria, we're going to need to think outside the box. And this is exactly what I know Dr. Lanre Tejuosho brings to the table.
A 300-level university student, Rhoda Agboje, and her boyfriend, Ifeanyi Nwankwo, have been arrested by officials of the National Drug Law Enforcement Agency and the LEA for selling drug cookies, also known as brownies, to school children and other unsuspecting members of the public in Abuja. Mr. Rhoda was arrested following a complaint that she gave the cookies to a young girl to eat, and after eating, she lost her mind, making incoherent utterances due to the effect. Having confessed to her crime, Ms. Rhoda says she specializes in producing the cookies with her boyfriend and sells each pack of 3 pieces at 1,500 naira. Over 200 pieces of the drug were recovered from the boyfriend's house. According to the NDLEA, the suspect also sells the drug cookies at parties, supplies to some supermarkets and clubs in the Federal Capital Territory. Meanwhile, the NDLEA has launched a manhunt for another member of the syndicate involved in producing the cookies with Arizona, a highly psychoactive variant of cannabis, alcohol, and rohypnol, among other ingredients. And that's all from Abuja. Let's go back to Lagos, where Ann Waldo is standing by with business news.
Thank you, Terry. Hello and welcome to Business News. Let's begin with the Central Bank Governor, Mr. Godwin Emefiele, asking banks to leverage their presence in other parts of Africa to support Nigerian businesses seeking to expand into new markets. Speaking at the annual export seminar organized by Zenith Bank, Mr. Emefiele says that the Apex Bank has set up 500 billion naira facility for export stimulation. Also, the Group Managing Director and Chief Executive Officer of Zenith Bank, Mr. Ebenezer Onyago, says the bank is partnering with the African Continental Free Trade Area to build a trade hub to connect traders on the continent. He adds that Zenith Bank has made remarkable success at promoting non-oil export for Nigerian businesses.
The need to diversify the economy amidst the dwindling fortunes of crude oil continues to evoke discussions on ways of moving away from fossil fuel. Beyond its investments, Zenith Bank, through its export seminar, provides the platform for discussions on non-oil exports in Nigeria. This year's virtual edition focuses on the role of intra-regional trade and non-oil export initiatives in enhancing Nigeria's economic prosperity.
Zenith Bank has already extended a hand of fellowship to the African Continental Free Trade Zone in supporting the initiative in building a bigger and more diversified, inclusive African market.
The president of African Export-Import Bank, Professor Benedict Orama, and the Secretary General of the African Continental Free Trade Area, Wamkele Mene, explore various non-oil export potential and how the African Continental Free Trade Area can help Nigeria actualize them.
The AFCFTA will, for instance, offer Nigerian products and services preferential access to the huge African market, which currently sources over 84% of its products imports from outside the continent.
With its sizable low to semi-skilled labor and appropriate policies and incentive systems, Nigeria can become a hub for labor-intensive manufacturing in Africa.
The initiatives being put in place by the CBN.
The governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria, Godwin Emefiele, explains steps taken by the CBN to expand trade in Africa.
We have set up a 500 billion naira non-oil export stimulation facility currently domiciled at the Nigerian Export-Import Bank. And we would like to use this opportunity to encourage Nigerian businesses to please tap on this available facility at single-digit interest rates, not only for the good of our people, but also for the export, to boost our export opportunities.
The webinar also features a panel of professionals and practitioners in the trade and export ecosystem. According to Zenith Bank, the yearly International Trade Seminar is part of its contribution to trade development in Nigeria, as it has provided a platform for canvassing and initiating trade policies.
Nigeria's local equities market made a rebound today, extending a steady rebound at the close of trading with a modest gain. Layo Adegoke has the details.
Hello and welcome to the Stock Market Report.
Well, there you have it. The bull has maintained its dominance, although the market has witnessed the rebalance from yesterday's surge, closing today's trading at 0.43%, with a market cap at 20.41 trillion naira. Volume, value and deals were lower than yesterday, despite continued interest in banking stocks. As you can see, bank stocks gained almost 2%, with shares of Zenith and GT Bank driving the sector's performance. Insurance and consumer goods also gained 1.12 and 0.38% respectively. Fidelity, Zenith Bank and UACN led the top trades. On the gainers chart, Honeywell Flour closed at 1 naira 43 kobo, adding 10% to its share price, closely followed by PZ and Sovereign Trust Insurance. Royal Exchange, Port Paint and FTN Cocoa led the losers list. With first quarter earnings trickling into the market, we can only wait and see how results will impact investors' sentiment. Well, that's the stock market report. I'm Layo Adegoke.
That's business news for tonight. Thank you for watching. I'm Anne Mwawadu. It's back to you, Millicent.
Thank you, Anne. Now, Derek Chauvin, the former Minneapolis policeman, has been found guilty in the murder of George Floyd May last year. 12 jurors found him guilty of second-degree unintentional murder, third-degree murder and second-degree manslaughter, all of the charges against him. Chauvin was handcuffed in the courtroom shortly after the judge read the jury's verdict. He will now wait 8 weeks for a sentencing. For more international news, here's Simon Pusey in Around the World in 5.
Good evening and welcome to the Channel Studios here in London with your international news around the world in 5. Chad's President Idris Deby has died in clashes with rebels in the north of the country. The announcement of his death came shortly after provisional election results, which projected he would win a 6th term in office with 80% of the vote.
Un conseil militaire de transition.
An army general said in a televised statement that Mr. Deby breathed his last defending the sovereign nation on the battlefield. He had gone to the front line at the weekend to visit troops battling rebels based across the border in Libya. The military council will now be led by the 37-year-old late president's son, Mahamat Idris Deby Itno, a 4-star general. The rebels, from a group calling itself Front for Change and Concord in Chad, attacked a border post on election day. They were advancing on the capital, N'Djamena, several hundred kilometers to the south. Meanwhile, the UN Refugee Agency has said that more than 2,000 refugees from the Central African Republic have crossed into Chad in the past week following violence. It says the refugees, arriving after fleeing clashes between government forces and rebels in northern CAR, face difficulties securing food, water and shelter in Chad. The agency says its ability to provide for the refugees' basic needs is severely constrained by inadequate funding, with a third of the country's population being affected by the country's instability. The UN Children's Agency, UNICEF, says the number of migrant children trying to reach the US from Mexico has increased 9-fold since the start of 2021. The agency says the rise from 380 to nearly 3,500 has overwhelmed the facilities at Mexico's reception centres. The children are mainly from Honduras, Guatemala, El Salvador and Mexico itself, and half of them have arrived without parents. The Mexican government has recently sent troops to its southern border to clamp down on migration north, and many more unaccompanied young people and migrants' families are likely to be detained in the coming weeks. Last week, President Biden reversed course hours after signing an order to keep the number of refugees admitted annually to the US at Trump-era levels. Thousands of migrant workers are fleeing New Delhi by the busload amid a 6-day lockdown in the capital to curb the latest surge in coronavirus cases. Thousands of people were seen passing through the city stations and queuing to get onto buses that will bring them back to their hometowns. The lockdown kicked in on Monday night as Delhi joined around 13 other states across the country that have decided to impose restrictions, curfews or lockdowns in their cities. India has recorded more than 200,000 new COVID-19 cases daily for the last 6 days, marking the world's worst jump this month. The UK government say they will take whatever action necessary, including legislative options, to stop plans for a European Super League. It follows Prime Minister Boris Johnson's meeting with the FA and Premier League officials, as well as fans' representatives. The Premier League also held an emergency meeting with the division's other 14 clubs to devise a plan of action.
And it seems that there is only one topic.
Meanwhile, the FIFA president warned the breakaway teams they could not continue to play in their current leagues and competitions, as well as leaving to form a new tournament.
War.
Armin Laschet has won the backing of German Chancellor Angela Merkel's party to run as a centre-right candidate to succeed her in September's elections.
Sehr intensive, eine sehr transparente.
The leader of the Christian Democrats was supported by 77.5% of the party's executive board members. His rival, Markus Söder, said he accepted Mr. Laschet's victory and only a united party could be successful at the polls. Mrs. Merkel, who has been Chancellor since 2005, is set to stand down at the 26th of September federal elections. And finally, scientists have launched 5 neon-coloured rock orbs down a Swiss mountain to study the growing risk of rockfalls around the world. These so-called test rocks, the heaviest weighing 3,200 kilograms, are part of ongoing research aimed at studying the effects of climate change in the high-altitude mountain regions. The scientists studying rockfall trajectories say their work may help other mountain regions prepare for the growing risk given by melting glaciers due to global warming. Over 3 years, the team hurled the boulders down different mountains hundreds of times, gathering data for a computer simulation aimed at predicting a boulder's landing spot to within a metre. And that's your international news around the world in 5. And now back to the channel's studios in Lagos.
Many thanks, Simon. On day 2 of the ongoing NWFL Premiership Super 6 playoff in Ijebu, Ogun State, Edo Queens suffered their second defeat in the tournament after losing to Sunshine Queens of Akure. In other games, FC Robo Queens defeated Bayelsa Queens, Delta Queens and Rivers Angels played out a goalless draw. Action continues tomorrow in the competition. Reports in England indicate that Chelsea and Manchester City football clubs will leave the proposed Super League. Now, Chelsea are understood to have changed their mind because of the overwhelming negative worldwide reaction. Man City appeared to be following suit as the project looked to be crumbling. FIFA President Gianni Infantino has warned that clubs involved in the European Super League could face consequences. Infantino restated his support to UEFA as it attempts to quash an initiative that threatens its prized Champions League and the health of domestic competitions. And that's sports news.
Thank you, Ayo. And the main news again. Today, the presidency condemned calls for secession and restructuring, said the federal government is working to address current challenges in the country. Also today, former Minneapolis police officer Derek Chauvin today found guilty of second-degree unintentional murder, third-degree murder, second-degree manslaughter in George Floyd's death in May 2020.
Verdict, count 1. Court file number 27, CR 20-12646. We, the jury, in the above entitled matter as to count 1, unintentional second-degree murder while committing a felony, find the defendant guilty. This verdict agreed to this 20th day of April 2021 at 1:44 p.m. Signed, juror foreperson, juror number 19. Same caption, verdict count 2. We, the jury, in the above entitled matter as to count 2, third-degree murder, perpetrating an eminently dangerous act, find the defendant guilty. This verdict agreed to this 20th day of April 2021 at 1:45 p.m. Signed by jury foreperson, juror number 19. Same caption, verdict count 3. We, the jury, in the above entitled matter as to count 3, second-degree manslaughter, culpable negligence, creating an unreasonable risk, find the defendant guilty. This verdict agreed to this 20th day of April 2021 at 1:45 p.m. Jury foreperson 019. Members of the jury, I'm now going to ask you individually if these are your true and correct verdicts. Please respond yes or no. Juror number 2, are these your true and correct verdicts?
Yes.
Juror number 9, are these your true and correct verdicts?
Yes.
Juror number 19, are these your true and correct verdicts?
Yes.
Thank you.
He now gets to wait 8 weeks for a sentencing. We'll stay with Channels Television for more updates. That's the news at 10 tonight. Thank you for watching. I'm Millicent Walker. Have a good night. Stay safe.